What's up, Attack MMA? I'm your host, Zach Weicker, and so we got a very special guest. He's a professional fighter with a 10-0 record, coming off a big victory at Dana White Contender Series Week 10. Please welcome Luis Gurule. Luis, how are you doing today, my friend?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, and we'll start off pretty simple. How are you feeling after that big win last month?
Man, I feel awesome. It's been good. Just taking a little break, getting back to training now. So yeah, it's been good, man.
And of course, you won that UFC contract. So how much does that mean for you and your family to be a UFC fighter?
Nah, it means everything. Super validating. I told myself like 3 years ago, I was like, I'm gonna give myself 3 or 4 years. If it's not going good, if I'm not in the UFC or if I'm not close to it, like I'm gonna have to figure something else out. So it's super validating. Made a lot of changes like for the last couple of camps. Leaving Factory X and stuff. So it all worked out. It all played out the way it's supposed to. So we're in the UFC now. Hopefully, keep up this undefeated run as long as I can.
Yeah, and you mentioned 3 to 4 years there, but it only took you two as your first pro fight was in 2022. So, did you expect to make it to the UFC this fast, or did it kind of shock you that you're able to get this opportunity so fast in your career?
I mean, I guess once I started fighting and seeing like how quickly I was getting better, that's when I was like, oh, I can actually make a run out of this. I can do it. I can get there fast, especially faster than most. I've just like my wrestling's good and my start picking up striking and Muay Thai really fast. So kind of just like helped me jump up to that next level a lot faster than some other guys that I started out with.
Yeah, and of course, your amateur career is what built you up, what helped you get that skill set. So, how would you describe your amateur experience, and how do you think that propelled you to have a successful pro career?
Yeah, so I only had two fights as an amateur. It's kind of hard finding fights originally. Just I'm a college wrestler, got that college wrestling background, so usually nobody wants to take those fights. So took a while to get those fights, and then that first one was super fast, like first round TKO. I was so nervous that one, and then ended up getting a second one out at I think that one is at MCF out in Nebraska, and I was fighting against a really credentialed striker, ended up beating him by TKO. And then after that, we are like, I think we're going to have to go pro because there's no amateurs that want to fight me anymore. um, but, I felt like I trained with awesome training partners. I've trained with Brandon Royval since I was an amateur. So I was like, well, I'm training with these good guys every day. All the other UFC fighters at Factory X, like Chris Gutierrez and Yusuf Bilal and all those guys that were close to my weight. So I was like, it just is what it is. Let's see if I'm good at fighting. Let's see if I like it. Let's see if I'm gonna continue this and as an actual career path. And ended up doing really well. So yeah, it helped prepare me for
Yeah,
that.
and
The next step.
yeah, and you mentioned your college wrestling experience. So how would you compare your college wrestling and winning a college match to winning an MMA match? What's the difference like in when you're getting your hand raised by the ref in on the mat and when you're getting your hand raised in the cage after a 3 round war?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference is like you wrestle so many times in a wrestling season, and I've wrestled, since I was 14 and throughout college. So I had so many matches. Like, I've lost count of how many matches I wrestled in Greco, freestyle, folk style. So I was just constantly wrestling every weekend. So it was like you kind of learn to handle the losses, you learn to handle the wins. You're like, oh, okay, and so it's kind of not to say that winning wasn't important, like it was so important to me, but it's just so much more goes into fighting in an MMA match. Like you're training 3 months for a couple minutes, possibly for 15 minutes, for 25 minutes. And so it's crazy the amount of pressure that you could put on yourself. And so it cracks some guys. Some guys just, they cannot handle that pressure, and it works on them, eats away at them. They don't go into the fight mentally as prepared as they should. But I think wrestling helped me a ton with that because I wrestled so many times and I've competed so many times that it's like well, it just is what it is. It's just people put too much thought into it, you know. Like one of my favorite like YouTube videos, this documentary about JB Mooney. He's like, you know, one of the most winningest bull riders in history. And he's like, all these other guys are doing all this weightlifting, they're like training, like doing all this extra stuff. And they're like, what's your secret? And he's like, I just ride. It's like, that's all it is. I just ride. And I was like, I always laugh about that and like, joke around with my wife about it. I'm like, you know, guys put too much thought into it. Yeah, I just fight. That's all it is. Like, I just fight. I'm fighting for us, for our future, you know. So it's easy when you go into it with a mentality like that.
Yeah. And you mentioned getting your hand raised, and you just got your hand raised in a split decision. So when you heard it was a split decision, what was your reaction?
I knew it was a close fight. You know, he's a great competitor. You know, his wrestling credentials, his fighting credentials. He's another undefeated guy. Um, but I thought for sure I would win if the judges awarded, you know, just damage. If they awarded like constant pressure, like that constant fighting attitude where it's like, I'm not there to, you know, wrestle you and stall you out. I'm trying to put you away. Like I'm fighting for this contract. I'm like trying to knock him out the last 30 seconds. So I'm like, you know, pointing at the ground, like, come on, like, let's make this exciting. Like either we'll both get signed or one of us gets knocked out. But, you know, I want that contract so bad. I was like, you can knock me out if you can in the last, you know, 20 seconds of the fight. I don't care. I wanted that opportunity so bad. So I was like, hopefully the judges saw all of that and reward that instead of just like, the, you know, the constant trying to slow down the pace, trying to just wrestle, which they did. So I was pretty excited about that. I was so happy. I was like, man, if they award damage, I got this.
Yes, as they should. And you could tell that you put it all out there. And personally, looking back at the fight, how would you rate your performance?
um, I definitely think like the weight cut affected me a little bit. Like usually I'm a lot I think my cardio is definitely better when I have like the camp and stuff, but still rate that as one of my best performances. Like I was even talking about that with my coaches where like it's pretty cool like um because you know I haven't been striking that long. So it was like me and my coach, like we always like think of it as like fights. Like you know, this fight we are working on our low kick. Like this fight we are working on like slipping the jab and trying to land combos. This fight we are working on like counter wrestling and get ups. So it was cool because it was like a culmination of all those efforts from like my first pro fight. And so I was like, I would rate that as one of my best performances yet, just due to the fact that we combined so many fight camps and it like just came to a head perfectly where we were like we were doing it all without thinking because it was like the game plan was literally just like, dude, get up off the takedowns and then just try to hurt him on the feet. Just you can't slow down. Like you have to go out there and try to hurt him every time you both are standing.
Yeah, and this was on short notice, and to have this great performance on just 7 days' notice, does that kind of remind you that you're able to do this in 7 day notice? Kind of makes you think what you're able to do on a full camp.
Yeah, for sure. It was like, and that's like it goes back to like what we were talking about before, where it's like just go out there and fight. Like, what does it matter? It's like I can do this on 6 days. I can do this on 3 months. But yeah, for sure, I'm super excited for that UFC debut because actually having a camp, you know, 2 months, what a month, like, you know, it's a huge difference because, you know, going into that Piccinini fight, I had fought about 2 weeks before that. So that was 2 weeks of doing nothing but like stuffing my face and like just living life, having a good time, like going to concerts, having fun with my wife. And so it was like, yeah, I cut 26 pounds that week. It was one of the most brutal things I've ever done. So once you do that, you're like, all right, the rest is easy. You know, we succeeded in a fight with probably the worst possible, you know, just events leading up to that fight. You know, luckily I wasn't too injured. My wrists or my fists were a little sore from that fight before, but it's like if I can do that off of, you know, jumping off the couch, like I'm gonna I'm gonna shock the world going into that. I want to put the division on notice once I get into the UFC and I'm actually like fighting in the UFC next year.
Yeah, and you mentioned how tough of a weight cut it was, and 26 pounds is a lot, especially at your weight class. So, what
Yeah.
motivated you to get through, and what are some tactics that you use in your weight cut to have successful and a healthy weight cut?
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, honestly, the motivation's all around me. It's like just being with my wife every day. Like, I told her, it's like, look, I'm gonna be good at this. I'm gonna make a career out of this. I'm gonna buy us our house. Like, I'm gonna do this for us. And so, she has always been my like greatest motivation. And then I was already gonna be out in Vegas for Brandon Royval's fight. And so it was like seeing him cut weight and seeing how he prepared through like the whole week before my fight. It was like, man, it was like so cool. Just like having a friend and role model, like seeing how his fight week went, and seeing how he cut weight. Like I was like, man, he cut weight like a G. Like I can't, like that's my teammate, Like I can't let everyone else down. Like everyone stayed in Vegas for my fight, and so yeah, I was running an hour in the morning. I was running an hour at night and then still like training, doing media for Contender Series, like hanging out with the guys. And then so we got down to like 16 and a half pounds the day before. It was like my metabolism just slowed down and I was like, oh, like we were so sad. Me and Clay, one of my coaches, went down to check weight and we were like, shit, man, like we stalled out at 142 and a half and I was so sad. I was like so beyond sad. I was like, shit, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. And like we go up to the hotel room and Royval's there and he's like, how much do you weigh? And I was like, 42 and a half, man. I was like, I don't know. And he's like has the biggest smile on his face and he's like, my dog, that's awesome. And I was like, what? Really? And he was like, man, you could totally make that. I made it at 142 one time. And I was like, oh shit, really? And like I don't know if he actually did or not, but it made me feel better because someone was happy about it. And so basically, yeah, we the day before we started cutting like 11 o'clock in the afternoon. We just cut into like three sections. So it was like the first one we had the portable sauna. I lost like 7 pounds, like super fast. We just watched a couple movies, just sat down, lost weight. It was easy. And then the next weight cut, we were trying to use the sauna again, only lost like 3 pounds. And we were like, oh shit, we better switch it up. And then, yeah, took like a little break, took a shower, ate a little bit of pineapple. And then the rest of the time was just in the bath and ended up doing it like 7 o'clock in the morning later. So we made weight and I was like, holy shit, that was the craziest thing I've ever done. That was the hardest thing for sure. But, my whole little team, they're all there to support me. We all cut weight overnight together. Everyone was super tired, but we did it. So it was awesome.
Yeah, that is amazing. And obviously, you and Royval are very close, but how would you describe your relationship?
Um, yeah, man, he's such a good friend, teammate. Yeah, he's one of the major reasons why I started fighting because I started going to Factory X. I started training with all the guys, and it was like I'd see Royval out here, like training every day, putting all the work in. Like one of the hardest workers in the gym, always. Like I remember when he like fucked up his shoulder. Can't remember if it was before or after the Moreno fight, but I think it was after because he had to get surgery. And that dude was literally in there every day at the gym, and he was just working on his. I think it was like just doing jabs, like whatever arm that could hit, he was just hitting the bag with it like constantly. So seeing him do that, and I was like, man, like what is, and not taking anything away from Royval at all, but it was like, if he can do that, like why can't I? He's just like such an inspiration where you like see someone else like chasing their dreams and like having that much dedication. Dude, having people around you is so important like that because it's just so motivational. Like me and him grew up like, same area of Denver, like same. So it was like seeing somebody like that and you're like, fuck, like that dude's so driven. Like I'm driven. He's doing it. Like I'm just gonna give it a shot. He's out there chasing his dreams. Like that dude gave me inspiration to follow mine. So I'll always be like super grateful for that. So yeah, man, I do anything for him. You do anything for, me. Like we're just such a like close knit team right now that it's awesome.
That's great. And if Royval goes on to face Pantoja next, how do you think this time will be different than their previous encounters?
Dude, I think Brandon takes it for sure. Um, like Brandon was putting it on Pantoja, especially that last round before Pantoja was able to get those takedowns. And Royval's like defense has only gotten better. Like you saw with like his previous fights, like that dude's hard to take down, and he's so dangerous. Like with those knees, like he's so dangerous and scary to take down. Like those knees come out of nowhere. So I'm biased, of course, but I definitely think like Royval, he's gonna be a champ. He's gonna do it.
Yeah, it should be an exciting one. And to go back to your fight, usually in the Dana White Contender Series, Dana really only looks for finishes, but your fight ended in a split decision. After the fight, were you concerned at all that you weren't going to get the contract just because you know what Dana White usually is looking for?
Yeah, for sure. I was scared shitless. Like even though I won and like he was like everybody shaking my hand and stuff, and I was like so pissed after the fight. I was like, God, he shot that single leg in the last 30. I was like, I was going for that knockout. Like, and then yeah, just sitting on the chairs and like, the fight after me, the dude got that rear naked choke super fast. The one before me, it was like that crazy war. And so I was sitting there and everyone else was like, "Oh, I wasn't worried," but like I was so nervous. I was like, "Ah, come on, like please, like, you know." And I mean, my manager's been fighting for me to get into the UFC too, so he's been constantly in everyone's ears, like, "No, like give this dude a chance." Like, I mean, Jason House has been awesome. Like, he's always gunning for me. So yeah, it was a super big relief though when he was like, I mean, he said so many nice things about me too. So I was like, oh, what? Like, I was so nervous. I was like, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah, and you mentioned that he mentioned a few nice things to you that we saw on air, but how are your interactions with Dana at all, if you had any other interactions with them?
Yeah, he's just super nice, dude. He's like super complimentary of, all the fighters and stuff, like before the interviews and stuff, I was able to shake his hand and he's just like, awesome fight, man. That was great. Thank you. And I was like, oh, thank you, dude. Thank you. So yeah, he was super great. It was cool, like just being around there. And I mean, it was super helpful too, like being around Royval's fight because the Apex was like on 10,000 compared to Contender Series. They had the music, they had like I think the Vanderbilt baseball team was out there, like so. There's like everyone was crazy, they're screaming and stuff, and then a Contender Series was chill compared to that, so it was nice.
Yeah. And with the Contender Series, you got to do some non-fight related stuff as you're able to do all the media stuff related to the fight. So how's that whole experience for you?
And yeah, that was pretty all right. I mean, kind of sucked having to go do all of that, like especially because I was cutting so hard. So I was like, but it kept me, out of the hotel room thinking about how hungry I was. So it was good. And I mean, it was a good experience too, seeing what it's like once you're in the UFC too. So I was following around Royval's whole fight week. So it was good just, being there, seeing like how a future champ operates, like seeing how, professional everything is. So it's a big difference coming from the regional scene for sure.
Yeah. And of course, after a big win, you have to celebrate. So how did you celebrate your victory?
Oh man, I need to stop celebrating. I haven't stopped, honestly. I need to stop before I have another 26-pound weight cut. But no, I just, spent time with family. I think after the fight, we went and ate all you can eat sushi. So we had some sushi and sake after. It was pretty good. So my wife and my mom were able to make it over to Vegas. So we just had a little team dinner and family dinner. So it was nice.
Very nice and well deserved, of course. And you did get a call up last minute, as we discussed, and it was week 10. So the fact that you did not get an original notice to be on the Contender Series, did you have doubts in your mind that oh, this might not happen now, or this might never happen because you didn't get that call?
I mean, yeah, for sure. This whole year has been pretty nerve-wracking, right? Because, I've been undefeated. I'm out there fighting like incredibly tough competition. Like if you looked at my record compared to a lot of these 25ers and the people that I've fought, like I haven't had an easy fight ever. And that's something I pride myself on. So, but it's still like, right, you're constantly watching what you want to eat. You're constantly like unable to travel because you're like, well, what if I get short notice, or like maybe I should like schedule another fight. And so even this Silva fight, everyone was like, no, just wait, man. You'll get short noticed. And I was like, dude, I need to have that goal. I need to become undeniable. Like I don't want to be put on the back burner like some of these other guys where they're like they might have a good record or something, or but they just they spend 2 or 3 years of like their prime outside the UFC. I was like, no, man, I want to be undeniable. I'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. Like, just keep giving me fights because I'm gonna be in the UFC by the end of the year. And I just kept telling myself that. So when everything's got hard, between the diet or injuries or training, I was like, I'm gonna be in the UFC by the end of the year. Like, I'm going to do it no matter what. So I was getting ready to fight like every, a couple more times by the end of the year if I had to, and maybe fight for the title with Fury after that if I didn't get a call.
Yeah. And then, of course, you did get the call. So, what was your reaction when your manager called you saying that you had this short notice opportunity on the Contender Series?
Honestly, the first reaction was more stressed out than even happy. I was like, shit, I gotta make weight. And I I was like doing calculations in my head. It was like, what's the max you've ever cut weight? Like, can you do it like in this amount of time? And I was like, are you are you sure? Like, and he was like, yeah. He's like, I think we really need to take this. He's like, I don't know if we'll get short notice, but you need to take this opportunity. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so yeah, honestly, it was like that first day was more stressful than anything because I was like doing all these. I was trying to calculate like what's the max amount of weight I can lose a day, like how much do I need to run. I was like trying to get a hold of my like old nutritionist plan and stuff. But then after I figured all of that out, like the details, I was like, okay. Now I started getting excited. I was like, okay, like we can do this. He's on short notice for me as well. It's just it works both ways. Like they're only going to have a certain amount of time, and we knew what his game plan was going to be anyways. You're like you're going to try to take me down and wrestle me, which he did a great job of that. Like especially that like first couple minutes of that fight, that was crazy. So I mean, but yeah, that's pretty much how the emotions went right when I got the call.
Yeah, and of course, this was the biggest stage and biggest fight of your life. And after competing in that, you're already a motivated individual, but after competing on such a big stage, does that motivate you more than you already are?
Oh yeah, for sure. It was like when one of my teammates got the Dana White Contender Series, Markel Maderos, he was like one of my favorite things I heard anyone say once they got into the UFC. He was like, "The work's just begun." He was like, "That the work's only begun. It's only gonna get harder from here. You're gonna have to train harder. You're gonna have to train more. You're gonna harder, smarter." And so it was like, yeah, that's the only thing I've been thinking of. It was like, all right, I've had my break. Let's get back to it. The work's just begun, and I love that. Like that excites me. That motivates me. And I'm like, man, it's like it's so cool. It's like one of my favorite movies growing up was Bloodsport, and they have like the Kumite and it's like all the best fighters from the world like come together. And I was like, man, this is like real life Kumite in here. So yeah, I've been pumped. I've been pumped to like train. I've been like already having like this little Rocky 4 montage going on. Just like we got a big old blizzard over here in Colorado, so just been like running every day in the snow. Like I'm super motivated now. I'm so excited for that debut.
I love that, man. And on your motivations, my last question for you is, what are some of your short-term and long-term goals, both inside and outside of the cage?
Yeah, so short-term goal, that's going to be, I'll put it at a year. My short-term goal is I want to fight 4 to 5 times next year, remain undefeated, you know, get a new renegotiate for better contract, um, and then hopefully be ranked in the top 15 by the following year. And 5 year goal is 3 to 5 year goal is definitely going to be fighting for the title or close to it, ranked in, top five, one, in that contender kind of spot. And then, as far as outside of the cage goes, and the definitely long term plan is well, short term plan, we just, we left Factory X. We got our new team going. Our name changes every week depending on who decides what it is when they're getting interviewed. But definitely trying to just get our team together, get our training solid, and then hopefully getting those other guys to be undefeated next year as well. Get Brandon up to a title fight, and then long term outside of fighting is either going starting my own geology business or working with my wife and starting our own business together.
That's amazing, man. It really is. Is there anything you want to shout out? Anything you want to plug before you head out of here?
Uh, yeah, just follow me on Instagram, just Gurule underscore MMA. Yeah, just I've gotten a lot of fans from that last fight. Sure to get more after you see me fight in the UFC next year. So just big things coming up. So thanks for having me.
Luis, it was more than a pleasure having you on. I'm excited to see what's next for you. Folks, that's all for today. Until next time. Peace.